Vinland Saga is a story that means a lot to me in a way that is actually kind of hard to put into words, but I'm gonna take this chance to try. So let's start at the beginning. Vinland Saga is the story of Thorfinn, an innocent boy growing up in Iceland. He wanted to travel and fight and be a great man. And yet that childhood innocence didn't last, cut short by the death of his father at the hands of the Viking Askeladd. Driven by rage and resentment, a desire for revenge, Thorfinn trudges through a life of war for years, taking countless lives and surviving countless battles. Vinland Saga gives a brutal and honest, if not a little sensationalized, depiction of war in medieval times, as well as the awful things that come from it. And Thorfinn partakes in and endures all of it. All that effort just for Askeladd to die at the hands of someone else. An event that truly breaks Thorfinn. This is the life of Thorfinn in Season 1, a journey of war and treachery that had me on the edge of my seat for every single episode. That being said, this was not Thorfinn's story, definitely the protagonist by technicality. He shared the spotlight with Askeladd and Canute, the real standouts of that season, but that's okay, because this was only the prologue of Thorfinn's life. This is only where his real journey began. From this point on, he was sold into slavery at the lowest point of his life. As far as he could tell, he had nothing to live for and nothing to hope for. And haunted by the countless acts of killing he committed during his time as a warrior, he was only driven further into the depths. But this was not the end of Thorfinn. Through the proper guidance of those around him, he did not completely sink, but instead resolved to be better. It begins as a goal to swear off violence entirely, a task already difficult in the world he lives in. But eventually, he decides that the only way to atone for all of the lives he took is to create a land where they can truly rest. A land without war or slavery. Now, when looking at this, many will see it as primarily a story about pacifism, or maybe a story about atonement. Neither of these are wrong, but they really fail to get at the core of what this story is about, and that is personal growth. A scene that strikes me in particular is when Thorfinn claims to be totally empty, and he is advised by the old man Sverkel that empty is the best thing for one to be. Because an empty person can become anything, they can be reborn. And I love this moment because its purpose is primarily to inspire hope. Not necessarily that Thorfinn will become some great man who does many great things, just hope that there is something left to do. Something left to walk towards, and it begs the question, how does a person truly grow beyond being empty? And the answer is that it begins with work. Hard work, bitter work, but not the work of destruction. There's no honesty in senselessly taking from others. Specifically, the work of creation. In this arc, Thorfinn is specifically contrasted with Snake and his band of warriors. They are people who deal in death, who make their business out of killing, and in the context of the farm, they are put on a pedestal above Thorfinn. They have power over him, can kill him even if they have the right approval. But in reality, they're pathetic, and when they're at the receiving end of the death they so readily threaten people with, many of them crumble under the pressure. To contrast that, Thorfinn is presented as a lowly slave working on a farm, but not really. The story takes the grueling work of a farm and recontextualizes it into something beautiful. Obviously, it's a terrible thing that this growth was experienced during his enslavement, and there's no way to ever justify that. For his growth, it was his attitude that matters most of all. It's not necessarily the work that changed him, since he was chopping down trees before Einar ever showed up with no growth to show for it. What matters is that he wanted to genuinely engage in building something rather than tearing something down. Through this work, he is not only able to do something as essential as producing food, in a sense dealing in life instead of death, but it's through that work that he is able to have a best friend and to have a goal to work towards. Through honest work, he can be reborn as someone better. And this brings us to his ultimate goal, to create a land of total peace, to create more than he ever destroyed, and he wants to create this land in Vinland. The series makes it rather clear, but Vinland is a real place, or it was. It is now a part of what we call North America, which has had more than a controversial history with settlers. Now, I don't know how Vinland Saga ends, but I do have a rough idea of what happens. In reality, there is no land of peace. Thorfinn does not create a land free of slavery and war. Certainly, the author, Makoto Makoto Yukimura may write his story to where this does happen. Maybe Thorfinn will achieve that grand ideal, but I doubt it. And I mean, if you really look at the story, it has always been skeptical of non-violence. It absolutely supports it on a level of morality, but constantly questions its realism. Vinland Saga presents a world hopelessly lost. These violent practices are so deeply carved into the people that inhabit this world, they can only carve that same life into those after them. Any chance of meaningfully upending that seems impractical. But does this make Thorfinn's journey meaningless? No, it does not. In fact, it's the very impossibility of his goal that makes it so worthwhile, and the honesty with which he approaches it. It's because it's impractical that it matters, and this is where Canute comes in. Canute also has the goal of creating his own utopia, but his version of this requires him to rely on violence, to accumulate wealth, to accumulate land and power, to consolidate that power, and then maybe he can achieve his goals. Certainly ambitious. On some level, Thorfinn admits it's a more incredible goal than his, but the methods do count. Whereas Thorfinn's journey allows him to give his ghost rest, Canute is only haunted by his. His father's decapitated head is always there to both taunt him and tempt him, to guide him further along the path of a king. Canute is the epitome of ends justify means. He can justify any action to get closer to his goals. And maybe he can achieve some semblance of those goals, but he only sacrifices his own peace of mind in the process. Thorfinn, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. Some might see him and say that he is suffering far more, but by the end he is beginning the path of a changed man, a better man, a man that others might even aspire to be more like, and he didn't start that journey by being practical. He did it through hard, bitter work. The true benefit comes from that he did this work honestly, with the intention of making something more. That there is an inherent beauty and benefit to the work that creates things. In the pursuit of a grand ideal, it is not the ideal that saves us, but the pursuit. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about some events in the manga, so skip ahead to the timestamp on screen to avoid that if you want. At the current part of the story, Thorfinn has his settlement, and it seems very clear to me that his goals will fail. I have very little faith that his philosophy will bear the fruit that he wants. But I don't think that truly invalidates his philosophy or ideals. When he was at his lowest, Thorfinn had nothing. Nothing but rage to keep him going, but when I look at him now, still working a farm, and see that he has friends, a wife, a child, people that look up to him and rely on him, I don't think anyone can say his efforts were meaningless no matter the result. So no, it doesn't matter that Thorfinn's goal may truly go up in flames, because along that way he will only grow further, become a better person, and through that he will have people at his side that will only bring his life more joy. This story means a lot to me, not because of how it handles broad themes of life and peace and religion and politics, but because at the center it is about becoming a better person despite the things that stand in our way, how to achieve that when we are at our lowest. And when we are at our worst, our most empty and lost, that is because it is only the prologue of our lives. Our real story begins when we make the bitter effort to grow.